Somewhere between the edge of being alive and feeling dead.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to discuss driving from Jasper, Alberta to Prince George, British Columbia. We can see here on the screen I have a Google Maps route just showing sort of the drive from Jasper to Prince George, and it does go through some mountains, and the distance is 375 kilometers. I think when I did my trip it was 390, but that was to my house, and I did that in a single charge. I'm going to talk about that in this video. So you can see here Google Maps says 4 hours 2 minutes, 375 kilometers. It does pass from the mountain time zone to the Pacific time zone, and let's talk about the strategy for doing a trip like this with your electric vehicle. So I guess the first thing is I drove in a Tesla. You think about your vehicle, and essentially for Tesla, because you don't have superchargers between those 2 points, at least not at this time, you're going to need to consider adapters. Now, I just want to mention the point of this video, I did drive from Jasper to Prince George in a single charge, so I didn't have to actually use any of these charging stations, but I just want to talk about them. Maybe you want to plan that way because it is pretty tight if you do it in a single charge. So here's a CHAdeMO adapter. This will basically work with any Tesla. Then there's the newer CCS adapter, CCS1 adapter, and your car needs to support this, of course. I'm not going to get into details of that, but essentially you should have some kind of an adapter because charging stations in between those two locations will either have CHAdeMO or CCS. And beyond charging adapters, you probably want some kind of a spare tire. You're going to do those long distance drives. I've talked about this before in other videos about how to prepare for long drives, but anyway, just mentioning it. Here's one from Modern Spare. They do have a kit that you can carry with your Tesla. I have one of these. All right, let's talk about the charging stations in between these locations. Over here on the right, we see Jasper. All right, so over here on the right, we see Jasper, Alberta, and over here on the left, Prince George. So in terms of charging stations, always do your homework. I always use PlugShare to see what's available. Jasper itself has superchargers as well as generic chargers at the supercharger location. Same with Prince George, it has superchargers and it has generic chargers there at the supercharger location as well as close by at Superstore. But in between, what do we have? So in between, if I kind of zoom in here, we have these two locations around Mount Robson, and I can tell you, I'll show some pictures and whatnot. The one right at Mount Robson, there's a few 25 kilowatt chargers, which is pretty slow, and there's also J1772, which is even slower. That's closed during the winter because they don't plow the parking lot. This other one is the Terry Fox rest area. Nice 50 kilowatt chargers there. Unfortunately, they've been vandalized, and so right now the fast chargers are down because the cables have been cut off by some vandals. But there is a J1772 slow charger, so in a pinch you could use it. Continuing on up here to McBride, they have a few 50 kilowatt chargers there, and I think in town there's some slower chargers elsewhere. Moving along here at Slim Creek rest area, there's a few 25 kilowatt chargers again and a slower J1772, and then you get to Prince George. So those are your options for charging. Always take a look on PlugShare because you do have times, like if I click on McBride, I'm pretty sure they had BC Hydro at some points in time talking about maintenance and power being off for certain dates. I've seen that before. Also, you can take a look here, for example, the Terry Fox rest area. See, it says under repair. And if you take a look, you'll see Ministry of Transportation due to vandalism, the site, the fast chargers are offline, etc. So always check before you go. Be prepared. All right, so looking at this from using something like a Better Route Planner, which is a really great tool for planning charges and whatnot, you can see if I was going to charge for this drive, then it would have me charge. I would drive to McBride, and I would arrive at about 35%, and I would want to charge up to somewhere around 80%, and then I would get home with a buffer of about somewhere between 4 and 6%. So basically, McBride, you can see there it should arrive with about 35% when I come from Jasper. Interestingly enough, what I do when I use a Better Route Planner, I put in waypoints. I'm not going to charge there necessarily, but I do that because when you look here on the screen, I started Jasper with a certain percentage. So for me, when we look at the actual statistics, I started at 100% because I wanted to. It was the first time I drove from Jasper to Prince George in a single charge, and I didn't want to get stuck, so I went up right to 100%. And we'll talk more about those stats. But here you can see I'm leaving with 90%. When I get to Mount Robson, I should be at 61%. That's why I use waypoints, because it tells you what percent charge you should be at those waypoints. And so as I'm driving, if I notice I get to Mount Robson and I have less than 61%, then I know I could start getting into trouble. I may not make it. Especially if you're going to arrive at a place with like 4% or some really low amount, you're going to have to slow down, turn off your heat, different things like that. So I always use waypoints to help me know if I'm on track with what's expected. So that's how I use a Better Route Planner. So let's take a look here. So I use this tool called TeslaFi. I'll make a video about this one day, but essentially this is a third-party service that you can subscribe to. I think it's like $5 a month or something, and it collects all the information about your Tesla drives. So TeslaFi is a great tool, gives you a lot of statistics about all kinds of things regarding your driving, charging, all that kind of thing. So here you can see one of the lists it gives you is top destinations by distance, or sorry, this is top destinations. If I go down and look at top longest drives, so here I am, I want to plan a trip from Jasper to Prince George in a single charge. And we looked at Google Maps over here and it says 375 kilometers. That's kind of a starting point. I try to look at my previous drives and say, have I done a drive like this before? And when I look at my list here, you can see it's sorted by kilometers. So that 375 was actually about 390 kilometers to get to my house. It was an extra 15. And so you can say I've done longer drives, right? I've gone from my house to Smithers in a charge. I've gone from my home to Dawson Creek in a single charge. So I've done 400 kilometers in a single charge before. So doing 390, it's within the realm of what I've done, so it's doable. Now the key thing there is weather conditions, incline. If it was uphill the whole way, that might be problematic. But my drive up north to Dawson Creek, it goes through mountain passes, very similar to from Jasper to Prince George. So looking at my historical information, I felt comfortable. So one of the drives I did, if I look at some of these other pages, I've driven from Alberta to Prince George in the wintertime. And so looking at those drives, like for example here, I've gone from Jasper to Canmore, and I've gone from Canmore to Jasper, that kind of thing. So I know I've done like some serious mountain driving within the vicinity. And so let's take a look at some pictures of that. So here, this was when I drove in the wintertime in January of 2022. I think I made some videos about this. You can look at my channel. And supercharging in Jasper. I was caught in a snowstorm. There's a fatality at Mount Robson, so we were stuck there for a number of hours. I think it was 3 or 4 hours, sitting there just listening to things on our entertainment system. And but we made it just fine. Now, I didn't do Jasper to Prince George in a single charge on that day, but I could have done it. I just didn't want to, because I didn't want to cut it that close with the family in the car. Hadn't done it before, so I didn't feel confident to do it. So I know I've done this kind of thing. I know what kind of buffers I've had before, so I felt a bit more confidence. So that was my drive from Calgary to Jasper to home, and I did charge in McBride. All right, so let's take a look at the actual drive I did in a single charge from Jasper to Prince George. So I'm just going to go through these pictures, and I've grabbed some pictures not just from this trip but from other points of the year, just to point out the charging stations. So I'll just narrate this. So this is the charger in McBride. This is probably the most important charger between the locations, because it's pretty close to the midpoint, and fast charging there. So just showing that picture. That's what it looks like. It's a really nice place to charge. BC Hydro chargers is what it looks like in the winter. And there's that sign for Welcome to McBride. It's close by there. Right at the charging station, you often see these deer hanging out around there. It's a pretty nice town and pretty chill. All right, so this is another charging station. This would be not the rest area. This is the visitor center at Mount Robson. So it is open a little bit in the winter, but it's kind of hit and miss. They usually just put bags over it and shut it down during the winter, but sometimes it has been open. Here's me charging with my C-Tech CCS adapter. All right, we'll scroll past that. All right, so now we're going to get into the actual picture. So this is me starting the trip, charging up in Jasper at the superchargers up to 100%. You can see over there, further down, there's 3 50 kilowatt chargers for generic vehicles that are non-Tesla. But I charged up to 100% in Jasper. Yeah, so right near the train tracks, and in the winter time you can see snow around the mountains. Not a lot of snow on the ground here though. All right, let's get moving along. So charged up to 100%. I think I have a screen showing. So here I am in Jasper, charged up to 100%. And I just set some waypoints, even in the Tesla navigation system, to know what percent charge I should have as I get to different places. So at the Terry Fox rest area, I should have 77%. McBride, I should have 59%. Slim Creek, I should have 35%, and so forth. So that's how I set it up so I could gauge myself. So here I am. I got to Tejon, which is after Mount Robson but before McBride. And at Tejon, there was traffic had stopped for a while because there was some construction on the road. So you can see here my Tesla navigation system said, oh, you're going to arrive with 0% when you get home. And I believe the reason it did that is because when I drove to Jasper, I drove at a certain speed, and if I continued to drive at that speed, it was telling me I probably wouldn't make it getting home, because the navigation system uses I think the last 100 kilometers as its basis for projecting how you're going to do going forward. So anyway, I wasn't too worried about it. If I absolutely had to, I could charge at McBride or Slim Creek. But here I am at Tejon, and just continuing along. You can see the traffic there. And at this point, where was I? I think at this point I was just past McBride, getting close to home. You can see here, 88 kilometers out. My current charge was 29%. It says I'm going to arrive with like 6%, so I was doing pretty good. And I did go right around the speed limit during this time. You can see it was raining out. And here I am arriving home with 7% charge. So I made it pretty comfortably. it all worked out. Here are the stats. So I drove 390 kilometers, took 4 hours and 10 minutes. Average was 163 watt hours per kilometer, which is pretty efficient, again, because I was doing the speed limit. And so yeah, it worked out all fine, and plenty of buffer with 7%, at least for me. All right, so just showing some pictures here. This is the beautiful Mount Robson. Definitely don't want to miss that. This is heading towards Jasper, but even then, as you come from Jasper, you know, when you pass by the visitor center, it's there on the right. Gorgeous views from there. And this is a picture of charging station, which would be Slim Creek. This is the Slim Creek chargers. These Delta chargers, 25 kilowatt, the same ones they have at Mount Robson. All right, so we're going to get into the statistics now. So I'm going to jump over here to TeslaFi, and you can see 389.99 kilometers driven, 93% of the battery used, and I do have a Tesla 2020 all-wheel drive long range. So I think when I first bought it, it was like 518 kilometers range was the rated range, something like that. Anyways, so I did it in a single charge. It cost $8 to do that drive. And 86% efficiency. You can see all the stats here and that single drive. And you can see sort of the elevation gains and losses, right? Kind of up and down. There is very spotty cell service in many of the areas between these two locations, so you should note that. So you may want to carry like an InReach or something like that. I might be overboard, but I do a lot of hiking, so I have those anyways. So essentially this is doable. You can see all the stats here. My average speed was 95 kilometers an hour, but I did go anywhere from 95, like 90 something up to 110 back and forth depending on traffic. And so I did go up to 110 and as low as in the 90s, but it worked just fine. Again, control your speed, don't overuse your heating and all that kind of stuff. If it's super cold out, if it's really snowy and windy, you could lose range pretty quick. Doing this in extreme winter temperatures, you probably do want to charge at McBride, just saying. And be prepared to charge, you know, at Slim Creek or something like that if it's really extreme conditions. So just wanted to point it out. It is doable to go from one to the other. I did it fine. And you can do it too. Just have to control your conditions and be prepared to charge if you know, conditions change beyond what you expected. Anyways, hope that helps you guys out. If you like this video, please click the like button, and if you like my videos, subscribe to the channel.
Driving through the mountains, rolling down my window, feel the warmth upon my skin. Summer's golden hour, met by midnight showers.
All right, everybody, we are home. Single charge from Jasper, Alberta to Prince George, and 7% remaining. Drove above and below the speed limit depending on the section. Basically drive the speed limit, long range all-wheel drive, and you can make it with approximately 7% left. Let's look at some of the trip stats. You can see the watt hours for the trip. So you can see I drove 390 kilometers, 63 kilowatt hours of energy, and 163 watt hours per kilometer for this trip. And yeah, everything worked out quite well. So there it is.